Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, depending upon where you are in the world. And welcome to this, the latest in the Open Group series of webinars about our variety of standards that we cover across the Open Group. Today, we are looking at an overview of the Open Footprint Business Guide. And we have some very expert speakers to talk to you about this in a minute. But prior to that, I will just give you some housekeeping information if you're not used to using the WebEx system. Today we have a couple of forms whereby you can communicate with us through the webinar. The first of these is the chat channel. If you look to the lower right hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little speech bubble. If you click on that, it opens up a chat channel. We'd ask you to use that chat channel just to communicate with each other, make comments, tell us where you're coming in from. It's basically a social networking channel. I would ask you, please do not put questions to the presenters in the chat channel. If you wish to put questions to the presenters during the course of the webinar, please could you open the Slido Q&A channel. Now you can find that if you look to the right of the speech bubble, you'll see three small dots in a horizontal line. If you click on that, it gives you some other options. One of those is to open the Slido Q&A channel. I would ask you please just to use that channel to put questions to the presenters. So use the Slido Q&A channel for questions to the presenters and use the chat channel, the speech bubble channel, just to pass comments or social network with each other. Okay, it's now my pleasure to hand over to my colleague Jim Hightower, who's the Open Group's Vice President of Sustainability and Market Development. And Jim will introduce the speakers for us today. So thank you all.
Thanks, John, and welcome everyone. This morning we have a packed agenda to talk about the Open Footprint Business Guide, as well as just give an update on where the Open Footprint Forum is at. We have three speakers. The first topic on the agenda will be a forum overview presented by Heidi Carlson, Forum Director of the Open Footprint Forum. She'll be followed by Martin Schultz, who's Chief Economist with Fujitsu, presenting an overview of the Open Footprint Business Guide. And then we'll wrap up with a presentation by AJ Vandevoort, who's the co-chair of the Open Footprint Forum and with Intertek. And he'll provide a presentation talking about the OFP Forum and what comes next. So that's our agenda. And then we'll, at the end, as John mentioned, we will have a Q&A session. So please feel free to submit questions on Slido, the Slido Q&A tab, and we'll get to those at the end. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Heidi, to provide an overview of the Open Footprint Forum.
Thank you, Jim. And I would like to express a warm welcome to all those who have joined today. As mentioned, I am Heidi Carlson, the Open Footprint Forum Director. And over the next few minutes, I will provide a high-level overview of the forum addressing the who, what, where, how, and why it matters. So what is the Open Group Open Footprint Forum, better known as the OFP Forum? It is a cross-industry collaboration addressing the need for a common industry-agnostic emissions data standard. The Open Group has extensive experience developing data and interoperability standards in broad technology areas such as Unix, TOGAF, and in specific industries such as process control, military avionics, sensors, and others. With over 900 plus member organizations around the world, the Open Group has a history of widespread adoption of our standards, leading to industry transformation. Next slide, please. So, who are the members of the OFP Forum? As you can see here, these are just some of the member organizations who currently represent the forum. A diverse, global, agnostic group with operations around the world. Next, please. Why join a global forum? No organization can solve today's interconnected challenges alone. The OFP Forum allows organizations to move from isolated efforts to collective, scalable impact. Collaboration today is a strategic necessity, not a secondary activity. Next. The power of collaboration. As you saw on the members slide, the OFP Forum brings together diverse sectors and geographies, enabling ideas to cross traditional boundaries. This is where innovation accelerates and duplication is reduced. Next, please. How do forums develop standards? This answer is in why consensus matters. The member-driven solutions developed through consensus are fair, transparent, and widely trusted. This shared ownership is what drives real global adoption, rather than fragmented implementation. In looking at this slide, it highlights why industry agnostic participation is essential. Modern value chains cross many sectors, so solutions must work across all of them. Let me repeat this. Modern value chains cross many sectors, so solutions must work across all of them. An industry-agnostic forum prevents silos and enables true interoperability. What are the benefits to organizations? Members gain influence, credibility, and cost efficiencies while strengthening partnerships. Participation positions organizations as leaders rather than followers of change. The benefits to society and markets. This slide broadens the lens beyond individual organizations. The OFP Forum accelerates collective progress, improves transparency, and enables better decision-making across society in regions globally. The forum aligns private sector success with public good. Next slide. What is the strategic value of participation? OFP Forum member participants do not just respond to change, they reshape it. They gain early visibility into emerging trends and help steer future directions. And finally, our call to action. The future is collaborative, it's global, and interconnected. The message is clear. Participation is how organizations help create, not just adapt to, global change. So thank you all. Thank you again for joining today's session. If you would like to learn more, please scan the QR code. I would be happy to follow up with you and talk to you more about how to join and be engaged in the Open Footprint Forum. Thank you.
Thanks, Heidi. And we'll now move to Martin Schulz's presentation. Martin?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for the introduction. Jim and Heidi, let me just switch. Yeah, now my camera's okay. So Martin Schulz at Fujitsu in Tokyo. We are the largest and foremost Japanese IT service company in Japan with major operations around the world. And I want to introduce you not only to the business guide. Can you give me the next slide, Jim? But that would be our business guide, where I was allowed to help quite a bit in terms of looking at it, shaping it, drafting it as a presentation that does something which Heidi was pointing out is so very important. This data model, this standard needs to be used across industries, across supply chains. And in Japan, where you have supply chains reaching deep into anywhere in Asia and around the globe, this is so very important. So what the business guide is doing is explaining how this can be done and how useful it is. And for that, I want to bring in a little bit of our own story with it and with the open group. Can you give me the next slide, Jim? So we are a member of the open group from the start. The reason is, as an IT service company, we are working across the board of all industry in Japan. Our roots are in system engineering. We need enterprise architectures to help our customers to run their systems. So one of the most important things for us has always been the TOGAF standard. And when you look at the certification numbers that we got from the open group, it proves it. We are number 4 internationally in terms of certified TOGAF architects in terms of certification. This is the background of it. So when we got contacted by the open group, we are doing a new standard, we were told, the open footprint about greenhouse gases, about emission standards. We thought, okay, that is interesting. Let's have a look. Give me the next slide, please, Jim. The main reason that we got quite interested from the start is because we have to deal with so many standards as system integrators, as system architects. This is just what we need to deal with when we are talking about green standards. We have, and our partners have major operations in Europe, across Asia. These are just some of the standards at the top of it that we have to deal with. This is, for example, the PACT standard for exchanging environmental data. There is certification about carbonization that our partners need to deal with. We have a commitment until 2023 to be carbon neutral. This is the RE100 coming in. Then we have the automotive industry with Catena-X, more and more partners being in that. Battery standards coming out with Surpass. In Japan, we have the Green and Digital Consortium, where we are a major partner. All that we need for all the different use cases where we help our partners to integrate their supply chains and building their business. This is automotive, where batteries are becoming so much more important, manufacturing, energy grids, smart cities connecting everything. Give me the next slide, please, Jim. So we thought, okay, what is it actually? Talking to people like AJ, getting an idea about what does this open footprint standard actually do. And the short answer is, well, there are all the emission activities where you already have your data in some format. It comes out of your production system where you might have implemented already some accounting for the CO2 emissions in particular. So these data are already available. But then you have in your supply chain significant diverse data from your partners coming in Excel sheets, coming in at whatever as PDF files very often, where we get additional data of, okay, well, this is our carbon footprint. These are the data that are coming in. And then, of course, dual materiality, where companies need to get their analytics right in terms of, okay, where is the CO2? What are the overall costs being involved coming out of your ERP systems? SAP is providing that, very often coming out of Oracle. And you put all this together in ideally one data standard, because from that basis you can do your reporting in Europe, in Japan, in Thailand, for the US in a very flexible way. With one data standard, you can connect to your customers, telling them, okay, what do you need and which form do you need it? One click and it changes. You can do this with your partners, and of course with the reporting where everybody needs something else. So very, very important as an idea. We said, that's great. This is what we need. This is where we will help. Can you give me the next slide, Jim? The other thing that was important for us is what Heidi also presented, is that there were so many smart guys already involved. And this is big oil and gas, because when you deal with CO2, you think as an IT service company, well, these guys know what they are doing. And they were already using, well, the basis basically of the data model in terms of how they were applying their scope 1 and 2 emissions. So a lot of work was already done. So the other one was, okay, they know as well what is going on with legislation. We have all the different standards. We are bringing everything together. So we need to work with those who are really doing something, and doing something that we know very well, data, and how to manage that. And this is where we thought, wow, now the open footprint is doing all these things for us if we help to get it off the ground. Next slide, please, Jim. So the idea is, from our side, when working on such a standard and later also applying it and helping our customers, is that everybody is in the middle of a major modernization, different steps. The current one is getting all the AI architectures right, all the data brought together so that you can analyze that you can, AI agents can help you to make the business model roll, as the good guys as well, and as those who are really future ready with the environment in the future. And the problems here are not going away. They are cyclical in terms of how interested people are. But what an enterprise architecture needs to do is integrating all the things for the future. And this is where TOGAF is helping as our foundation, where we are doing the architectures, but then all the new future-oriented requirements, and that would be the exchange of environmental data, plus now the data management of the environmental data. And this is in the middle with the open footprint, with WBCSD Pact, who are providing an exchange standard. What we want to do for the future, for our customers and for us, is of course the analytics of it. We want to have this as a business impact at the lowest cost possible, and then as well the maximum possible impact on society in terms of getting our future environment right. This requires AI analytics in the future. This requires that we are providing enterprise value by now having the lowest cost, the biggest possible connection between all the different systems, in particular in logistics, where Japan is so very good and so very efficient. And at the end of the day, of course, for the environment. Jim, please, next slide. Now, what we have already been doing last year, working on that quite a bit, is exchanging environmental data, CO2 data, product carbon footprint data, because we have been working with the WBCSD and the PACT standard, which provides a solution for putting your upstream CO2 data, your environmental data together, providing a product carbon footprint where all the data are consolidated for each product that you're providing to your suppliers. And this is going into a standardized channel of supply, moving this data from one supplier to the next. So we have been engaging from 2023 our major global suppliers and telling them, let's try that. Let's change the data. Let's do that step by step for a notebook, for example. And this is exactly what we did on basis of the PACT standard. We were the first ones doing this in practice throughout an entire supply chain, and it worked great. Some issues to be dealt with, but the exchange already went very well. What we didn't have is a standardized way of keeping this data. So we're working with different partners on it. Jim, give me the next slide. So for us, working already on this, and many of our customers are already using the PACT standard to exchange their data, which helps them also, well, to maintain the data, to have a clear focus, a clear understanding which data they will need, in which form. But we didn't have a standardized way of storing them, of managing them within the companies. And that is a big problem because you still have to do all this nitty-gritty work to get this into exchange and then storing them again. And this is now where the open footprint from next year will help tremendously. The data will be structured. They will be put into one data standard. Any database being developed for that can deal with that. So the cooperation between the PACT standard and the open footprint standard. So one that is already running around the world, and the other one that is now helping to provide the basis, the footing for it, is really what we need. Jim, next slide. Yes, and now Japanese busy slides explaining everything. Very hard to in a very busy way. This just gives you an idea of what we are dealing with and why this standard is now coming in for us very importantly. On the top one, it gives you an idea of our Scope 3 emissions. So all the data that we are getting when we are getting a notebook, for example, or any service related to IT, cloud-based servers, everything, this is 34% is the input that we are getting. And then we are providing emissions of 8% that we are cutting down to 0 right now. And then we have downstream emissions. These are the service being used by our customers when they are running our services, when they are running their workplaces, when they are running their servers. This is actually 60% of the emissions. Now, what we have so far is that with the PACT standard, Scope 3 emissions, so incoming emissions, can be accounted for, sorted out. We put this together with ours, but then we are still only around 40% of the story. What we also need is to understand which additional emissions are actually produced by our customers, because we want to help them to go down to 0 as well. We want to help them that they can provide messages about, well, this is what we are doing, and this is the bottom part, ESG management platforms. There will be many, many different ones. They will run the analytics to do the things in the most efficient way. But if you want to do that, you need really the data. You need to manage the data. And this is what we will be doing with the open footprint standard. Jim, please, next slide. Now, one additional really important thing for us is when managing all these different standards, it gets really, really cumbersome and really frustrating. And what we learned is that the open footprint standard is taking a lot of that work just off our hands, because it's compliant to this enormous number of different standards that are in the slide down there. So cross sectors and the greenhouse gas protocol, ISO norms, Catena-X in the automotive industry, in the chemical industry, different other ones. This is partially already integrated into the PACT standard, which explains how to handle the data when you exchange them. But then there are many more product rules coming in, one after the other. There are more and more coming in Asia as well, and corporate inventory and project rules that are coming in. And all this is being integrated in the open footprint data model, meaning when we put the data in there, we have a lot of compliance going for us already. And the great guys working on it will make it future ready for the next steps. Jim, please, next slide. Okay, what is in the data model? And this is where the business guide is now coming in, explaining what is actually in there, how you can do the next steps, and how it helps. The most important thing is, well, first of all, you put your organization in, and not just your organization, but any supplier you think that is relevant for you. So the organizational boundaries, the inventories, where you're working together with other companies, are part of that model where it's clearly defined, where you operate things together, where you get data on a regular basis, where you are in charge and other owns an asset. All that can be clarified. That is quite a bit cumbersome to think about it at the start, but when you have done it once, you can roll out what you're doing. So all the operations, all the product life cycles, all the different steps of emission calculations for different regions in the world can be put into your data management, into your data model, so that you click for the final step where AJ is coming in and telling you a bit more about the future verification and how things can be get rolling in the future, is already there and can be managed in a flexible way. The most important one is that you have the simplest reporting possible, because this is where real costs are getting involved for basically all our partners. Jim, next slide. So the data flow, and I will not tell you much about it because it is so simple in many ways. You define your organization, then you have the facilities, so the machines, the major factories you're running, the partners, or the shops you're running, or your partners are running, are in there. You put in the activities as they come, as the data are flowing. You put these together in activity parameters, which is often just fuel consumption, for example, as in this transportation case, where trucks are running on the road. You get your fuel consumption by a calculation method. You can have different ones for different things you're doing. And in the end of the day, the data model provides you emission statements that will become an emissions report when you need it, when you report to your customers, to the authorities at the end of the day, and basically you are done. So after the nitty-gritty work of getting your data standard up and running and the data in, things become pretty simple. And that is so very important in the current situation where everybody's looking at costs. Jim, please, next slide. So my final point is, where does this really help, and why did we get so deeply involved? And this is because of the opportunity it provides. When managing emission data, nobody really wants to do this in a way that is costly or really cumbersome for everybody. It needs to be easy. So you get support with a new open standard from all the companies being involved. You also get this from consultants like PwC, Capgemini, the WBCSD, who's providing services in terms of how exchange the data. You can advance pretty easy in terms of, well, to have one standard that is well explained and working in the simplest way. You can develop your systems along compliance when just using the standard because it is made for it, and you can manage it in the way you want. You can manage it in a way that you need the analytics to improve your supply chain, to improve your operations, because with the data you have an open source standard that can have additional objects in it, additional information in it that you need for your systems. You can just add that so that your systems become the smartest anywhere to improve things. We can help with that, of course, as an IT service provider, as an enterprise architect. And that would be my story, handing off to AJ, who can tell you much more about, well, how the standard came together and how it will be working in the future. Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you, Martin. And AJ, over to you.
Thank you so much, Martin. Knowing that you are talking from Japan and I'm talking from the US as a Dutch guy and you as a German, it's very interesting. But yes, good morning, everyone. I'm AJ van der Voort, co-chair of the Open Footprint Forum, and I represent Intertek in the Open Group. Intertek is a global engineering auditor headquartered in London. And you heard me saying that correctly, an engineering auditor, not a financial auditor. Today, I want to share with you what comes next. And there are some exciting evolutions happening, and that has an impact on our roadmap, and I will share them with you. So let me walk you through this transformation using the Open Footprint Standard as our foundation. And this is the first slide that Jim has put up. First of all, here you can see our journey of the last 4 years. And with some key milestones, as mentioned by Martin and Heidi, particular our alignment with the Pact. So what is our roadmap, right? Well, we've started to expand the scope by adding water and waste. And just to be clear, that so far we've been talking about greenhouse gas emissions. We already currently in our version 4 handle all the emissions, so that includes emissions that are not greenhouse gas, and it is over 200 emissions besides the greenhouse gas emissions. So by adding water and waste and expanding the scope, we're going to do that in version 5. So there are other things like scenarios, abatement, monetization, and emission sinks. I will explain a little bit later. But there is a very important thing that has happened recently, is that the business world is moving beyond simple counting and reporting to something far more powerful. And that is a comprehensive framework that was recently announced that supports both the regulatory compliance, which is necessary and it needs to be assured, but as well accurate calculations of emissions intensity at a product level. And that what Martin shared with you is the foundation of that. So now the business world is getting involved, and as well they move towards so-called emerging emissions trading markets, because there is a marketplace potentially, right, that needs to drive this. So if you go to the next slide, Jim. So the open footprint data model of what we have currently needs to evolve, right? We did evolve from a pure carbon counting tool, and we already expanded in other emissions, and we will expand it to water and waste, to a more comprehensive framework that supports as well emissions reduction obligations and a regulatory compliance towards a functioning emission marketplace. So what you see here, that first we have the carbon counting and boundaries. This is on the left-hand side, where we have spent most of our time in the last 4 years to doing this right. And that's where most organizations start. And Martin already shared with how Fujitsu has started with that, right? It's focused on the fundamentals, quantifying and tracking greenhouse gas emissions. Think of it as building a solid foundation that you can base everything on, because you need accurate data here, because everything that follows depends on it. This is just not about how much you're emitting, it's about defining clear boundaries and the activities so you know what to count. So then in the middle, we're going to move to obligations and compliance. Here is where it gets interesting, because once you can count emissions accurately, you need to manage them strategically and layer in emissions reductions obligations and regulatory compliance requirements. This becomes the basis for carbon, and you can see it, I've highlighted it in bold, accounting, which is different from carbon counting, right? So this means that organizations need to ensure that they can meet their commitments and they can pass audits, right? Because there is a key thing, you need robust verification mechanisms, right? Without transparency and verification, nobody trusts the numbers. Trust and credibility are essentially. And once you've achieved that, then finally we can arrive at the so-called emissions marketplace, right? And we will first focus on the carbon markets. This is the end game. Once you have trustworthy data and clear accounting, you can unlock a carbon market where companies can buy and sell, and if it's now credits or other commodities related to that. Organizations can offset their emissions or monetize their reductions. And this creates economic incentive. And that is what has been lacking so far in most of this sustainability world that we've been working in. So the progression is clear. You start with counting, then you need to go and be compliant. That means accounting is critical. And then you get into the value part, the commerce part, right? So each builds on the last. Now, next slide, Jim. Now, let me show you how we actually make this happen. We've identified a 3-pillar approach to so-called value-based emissions management. Think of these as 3 parallel tracks that mature over time. And pillar 1 is the first pillar. standardizing and democratizing emissions data. Now, that word democratization of data has become a clear driver these days, mainly as well because of AI. And this is about reducing friction in data management and compliance, right? We're talking about cutting data management cost, right? Now, I have an SAP background for 15 years, and I know how complex ERP systems are, right? Now, if we're starting to talk about carbon accounting, you need to think it in a similar manner. So if we don't get data management costs down, it is going to be extremely expensive to manage all this. So we need to reduce the effort spent on pre-audit validations. We need to lower our auditing costs and time, and we need as well to automate more auditing processes. And the value here is operational efficiency. You spend less time and money managing compliance, and you're freeing the resources for strategy. So that is pillar one. Pillar two is then optimizing the value based on emissions data, right? This transforms data into insights. You move from we have emission numbers to we understand our emissions deeply, right? And having been involved in this for the last 3 years with all the major enterprises like an ExxonMobil, a Shell, a Chevron, BP, Total, you name it, right? Besides Fujitsu and others, you can understand it gets very complex, right? So you need to understand your emissions deeply. You can reduce portfolio emissions, right? Most organizations that I've mentioned have got like low carbon divisions. So they are already, from a business perspective, heavily involved in managing that portfolio. Then you need to classify and compare those emissions data across operations, right? And then you identify emissions initiatives across your portfolio. The payoff, better decisions making, and a clearer path to your reduction targets. The last pillar, monetizing, right? The emission data. This is, sorry, Jim, this is where you create new business opportunities. You develop new emissions-focused business lines, launch low-carbon products, offset excess emissions, or reduce emissions-related taxes. And this last one is a big topic. And Jim, you can go to the next slide. We've done an extensive 3-month feasibility study based on open footprints, and the findings after conducting about 33 interviews across industry players confirms the business case. And you might be wondering, right, is it achievable? And the findings are clear. It's feasible to adopt a build once, and Martin mentioned to it, and deploy many approach. That's huge for efficiency. Why? Because standardization matters. You don't need to rebuild the entire system for every use case or every regulatory jurisdiction. Second, it's feasible to adopt a collect once and report to many approach. Think about organizations today. They collecting emissions data multiple times for different stakeholders. Regulators want it one way, investors want it another, supply chain partners want something else. Imagine collecting once and reporting to all of them. That's a game changer for operational efficiency. And third, the challenges and opportunities are broadly aligned across governments and corporations. This was an outcome out of the feasibility study. We're not seeing conflict of interests here. We're seeing shared problems. That creates momentum for solution adoption. And last one is, and it's very powerful, that there is a strong alignment on platform and technology needs with clear opportunities to leverage global standards and open source components. Nobody wants to reinvent the wheel. The industry is ready to build on proven open standards, and that accelerates everything. So to sum it up, we're at an inflection point as well in the Open Footprint Forum. The Open Footprints standard data model represents a shift from viewing emissions management as a compliance burden to seeing it as a business opportunity. The question isn't if this happens, it's when. And how quickly can your organization get ready? Thank you.
Thank you, AJ. We'll move to the Q&A section in just a moment. So if you have questions, please put those into the Slido Q&A tab. Before we do that, I'll mention that we have a workshop in London coming up in association with our EA Practitioners Conference, February 2nd and 3rd. The workshop that I'm talking about will be on the afternoon of the 2nd, and it focuses on the open footprint data model and data integration issues. It's aimed at enterprise architects, and we think it'll be highly useful for organizations that are grappling with, how do we bring together the data on emissions for our company? How do we, build in the supply chain and their emissions, and how do we make sense of all this? So please look for that. You'll find details on the Open Group's website under the events section of the website, and we'd love to see you there. So now let's go to Q&A. Again, feel free to drop questions into the Q&A tab. I've also put a QR code that will take you to the place in our website, in our library, where the Open Footprint Business Guide can be found. You can download it from there, and we'd love to have you to do that. So we have one question. This seems like a question maybe for you, Martin. Does the new Open Footprint support a company's new strategy in terms of disruptive innovation? So, how do we tie in what you all have presented on the data model with disruptive innovation happening in a company?
That is a great question. You rarely get a question how a global standard can help you to disrupt. And but following up on AJ on that one is, well, what you need for disruptive, for any innovation, is that your systems are running smoothly, and that you get the regulator off your back, and that you're doing things in the most efficient way so that you have the resources available for innovation. And this is where the standard would be coming in. Smaller companies would probably be able just to ignore all that and then just stitch together a report at the end of the year to be just compliant where it is necessary and focus fully on innovation and all the disruption they want to be doing. When you're already a little bit larger, it makes sense to get your systems right so that you have enough resources and people working on the innovation. And this is exactly what AJ was pointing to. But we should not forget, depending on what you're doing, you can also disrupt by having the smartest ways of analytics and forward-looking models that include environmental data. Your AI will need to tell your customers that how good you are, how efficient your systems are in terms of the dual materiality. And this is where the Tesla case comes in as one of the greatest disruptions we have in one of the biggest industry in automotive. Tesla wouldn't exist without selling carbon credits. This is where they got their cash flow. Until today, and at the start where they could finance their innovation by simply selling carbon credits that are coming out of the old guys, out of the combustion engine guys, using these credits to invest into their new systems, into the new business model. This is how Tesla disrupted, and this is based on carbon credits. And AJ probably can tell more about how you can do this now in the most efficient way when using the standard.
And I, there is a huge opportunity in the construction, in the design, right? I mean, for engineers to start thinking about, how they can design products, whatever these products are, from consumer products, etc., to, big infrastructure build outs, right? And what's related to that. Of course, the current big construction that is happening in the US here is the data centers, right? Now, similar to what Martin has mentioned around Tesla, right? How do these data centers get built? All on carbon credits, right? A lot of them are struggling at the moment to how shall I say, make the business case, right? But it won't survive unless they have carbon credits. Similar story, yeah.
Just since you mentioned it, I mean, we are supporting convenience stores in Japan, for example, but they're also global, like 7-Eleven. You deal with 23,000 stores here, 500,000 employees that are being put on AI-based systems. And stitching all that together is really something amazing. When you have the data flowing, that is something that you need. And in Japan logistics, we are working together with one of the smartest logistics provider in Japan, and we are bringing down the costs that are coming from the emissions, which are huge in logistics, in transport, by about 70%. And just as a side effect of doing that, we can manage the drivers being needed for these logistics by bringing down the emissions in the supply chain become so much more efficient, that we can bring the costs on drivers, on the how many hours they have to put in to get all the goods together, by about 30-35%, in an aging society with fewer and fewer drivers, and preparing for all the automotive driving that will do it in the future. This is exactly what you need when you want to innovate.
Okay, great answers. So another question, keeping up with regulatory changes in various jurisdictions is very time consuming. Does the collective collaboration model used by the Open Footprint Forum provide any leverage for member organizations in this area? And Heidi, maybe I'll ask you to comment on that one first.
Well, we do have within our membership base, we do have SMEs that are dedicated in their full-time positions and roles within their organizations, who are constantly monitoring the regulatory bodies, not only in the US, but globally. So the data model is taking into account the ever-changing regulatory bodies that are in constant change, as you can imagine, depending on geopolitical events, certain aspirations within different countries. I mean, take into account Japan, to Brazil, to the UK and the EU, and then again going back to the US. So there is a shift, but if you look at any global company that is operating around the globe, they are going to be required to follow the mandates that are being set forth by a particular region or globally. So it is definitely, we are taking that into account and building on that. And as mentioned, we have SMEs that come in. I know of one in particular that may even be in attendance today, but they are also always updating the members. They themselves are members, and they are updating the members on the current regulations that are occurring around the globe. So, AJ, did you want to tap?
Yeah, I just want to, express thanks to one of those members, Heidi, and actually particularly two members, both Ernst & Young and ExxonMobil in the beginning developed, we called it a so-called North Star document. And whenever we got stuck somewhere or a new regulation came out, we updated the so-called North Star documents, right? And that for us was a guiding principle to achieve what we have achieved. If we didn't have the North Star document, Heidi, we must agree, we would have been lost, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that came in early on. So thank goodness.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Because agreed with the gentleman that's asked this question, or the lady that's asked this question, right? It has been a challenge, and it continues to be a challenge. And let's not forget China coming at the moment after COP30 as well, strongly forward in wanting to take the lead, right? We often have a particular Western focus on this, but I see the focus shifting as well to the east, coming closer to you, Martin.
Oh yes, working with so many partners and many partners we do not know yet. You have no idea actually with all the trade disruption right now, how much the supply chains are changing, how the markets are changing. Asia is a swirl right now, and things are getting really interesting. You need to work with so many partners. If you have a base for that, that helps tremendously.
Okay. So another question, for non-emissions use cases involving greenhouse gas data such as CCS, is there a fit for this OFP standard data model, and what does that look like? And AJ, I'll point that one to you first.
Yeah, already in the early days, and thanks as well, Jim, to you through the open group, we bonded on a particular topic that once you have the emissions, you capture it, you transport it, you can put it back in the ground, right? Because that's what carbon capture and storage really means. And you know, for me, it's really the life cycle, right? In this case of carbon, right? You take the energy out and at the moment, the challenge that we're sitting, because there are various tax incentives in some parts of the world, those tax incentives have been reduced, right? And if that is good or not, and that's why value-based emissions management, including carbon capture and storage, should not need subsidies, right? That's one way of looking at it. So the cycle of carbon capture and storage has been a clear component within our working group. We have a separate working group for that. And I know, not wanting to step out of bounds here too much, but Heidi, you, me, and some others, we're looking as well at the mining industry here specifically, right? And to see what we can do that. Have I missed anything, Heidi, in that regard?
No, yes, definitely. So, as mentioned, not only as a forum do we operate within the forum base and the membership base, but on occasion we do also will extend what we call as a harmonization working group, where we will work together with another forum that's operating within the open group. And that way, again, we can work together across and develop scope and come up with solutions, taking into account the SMEs that are coming from the broad backgrounds that we have in the 900 plus member organizations within the open group. So that's what AJ is referring to. So it does sort of leverage, if you will, the relationships that we have and are capable of extending that reach out to those different forums and consortia. So yeah, so mining is one particular industry, you know, looking at agriculture, transportation. You know, again, as mentioned, we are working on the greenhouse gas emissions, but then when, you know, starting in 2026, the forum is going to move into water and waste. Now, then do we expand, you know, in broader scope? Do we look at social aspects? Do we look at, you know, the data that is necessary and required, you know, just to have the environmental and the social justices data that is continually to expand, and there is requirements for that. And to my knowledge, there is no set standard to be able to capture that data. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting opportunities, you know, but we're also just looking for that expertise and additional input and from various bodies and different organizations. So yeah,
That
very.
is so true, Heidi. I mean, I just sorry for jumping in, but I mean, everybody sees globalization in retreat, but there are parts where globalization is not in retreat. One is Asia as a region, where we are working with supply chains so much closer, and then on the environmental standards, this is working very, very closely with the Middle East. AJ, I mean, this is where you have been working a lot, where the carbon capture is becoming so very important important. Hydrogen is becoming important, at least in parts of the economy where you need to split things off, where you need to understand where it is, where it stays. We are working already, and this is where also smaller companies are coming in, at advisors, but also in terms of the logistics, doing things with Australia, where we are developing the business models between Asia and Australia, some of the smartest guys. This is rolling out now into the Middle East and Africa because the resources that are being provided, that are being stitched together, is such a complex thing in the future. We really need to have this efficiency, and we need to have carbon capture and storage in the system as well.
All right, great answers. We have time for maybe one last question. How do you see the open footprint data model fitting into the existing ecosystem of ESG and emission software solutions? And I'll throw that out to anyone who wants to tackle that. I know we have some of those software companies in the forum, but obviously there's a large population of other ones that are out there that could potentially adopt this.
Yeah. Well, we have this is exactly what we are doing. I should have had this slide. I deleted it in the end because I had too many, showing how actually the different providers are coming in on basis of the standard. I mean, what you're doing nowadays is everything is in the cloud. This is where the cloud providers need to help, and they help AWS on board, everybody being on board in terms of putting the data and the data model into the cloud so that the data are coming out directly. Then you have the management, which becomes so much more efficient on basis of the open footprint standard, because when you do this as the others are doing, and so many services are related to that, with standardization, with the data management, on top of that come the solution providers. This is where we are, of course, one, but then you also have Microsoft and all the different solution providers. When the data are coming in a standardized way, they can provide the systems in a so much smarter way. So there is actually not so much to do for the companies on the ground, because this is becoming part of an ecosystem where the data are starting to flow much more smoothly. And this is where, well, the collaboration is coming in that Heidi was providing. And a lot of that is just for free, because everybody has their own interest to get these things going. And when they are going, as they are already doing with the PACT standard in terms of exchange, for example, things are becoming, well, much smarter.
Yeah. And Martin, very well said. And I'll just add one thing to that, because when you think about a system being auditable, you need to think about the system of record, right? So everything at the end of the day is how you stitch it together. And if you see the data model as a normalization step within the data that you get from multiple sources, which then becomes your system of record, there's one way of looking at the architecture. In every implementation that we've been close to, and particularly the one that I mentioned, the feasibility study, it's never been to replace. It's always been to standardize so that the ingestion of the various systems and what you need to report has got one standardized format that you work with. So we, of course, to make it easier and to reduce the technical debt, it would be beneficial if a lot of the software providers would say, by default, we are OFP compliant, so that you don't have to do that work. I think if we get there in the next couple of years, once we have released the open standards in Q2 next year, so that everybody can utilize it, that would be the holy grail, right?
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
that also tiptoes into the ability to look at certification. So the open group does, we have that, and that ability to take and look at the data model. So, are we going to certify the data model itself, the standard, or are we going to certify persons that are utilizing the data model, or a combination of the two? So that's definitely something to what you're referring to, AJ, because if we're going to say yes, you're using the OFP or the open footprint standard. How do we verify that unless we're, that certification comes in as well?
And as a next step, what we are working on, your AI will love it too, because when you get the standardized data in, it can become much more efficient and focus on other things. So just waiting for the AI to solve everything and stitch everything together. No, this is not how it's working. You need to get a lot of the work off the back of the AI as well, so that you can use it for innovation in the next steps.
That's an accelerator of note. That's what we've all realized, right? A lot of it, what we have done over the last 4 years, now you can ask a lot of those questions, right? And build architecture and systems and solutions at the same time, right? It's instead of it taking years, it can take now days, hopefully.
Well, that's a great answer and a great note to end the webcast on. Thank you to all of our presenters, AJ, Martin, and Heidi, for your contributions. Thank you to the audience for participating, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So long.
Thank you. See you guys.